What if the empire you built was the very thing that destroyed the people you loved? What if the man everyone envied for his success couldn't even save the woman who once loved him, or the daughter who still did? When a billionaire CEO's phone rings one stormy night, a trembling voice on the other end shatters his world. "Papa, Mommy won't wake up." From that moment, Ethan Blackwell's life begins to crumble, brick by brick, choice by choice. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales of love, loss, and redemption. Every click helps bring more stories like I Need You, Papa to life. Stay tuned for the next twist. The city never really slept. From the 49th floor, the skyline shimmered like a constellation of secrets. Ethan Blackwell stood before the glass wall, tie loosened, eyes hollow. The world called him a genius, a visionary, a man who turned failing empires into gold. But inside his penthouse, silence reigned, the kind that mocked the echo of every decision he'd ever made. He checked the time again. Midnight. Another merger finalized. Another day spent talking to men who feared him. Another night spent alone. The whiskey in his hand didn't burn anymore. He'd grown immune to it. He thought he'd grown immune to everything. Then his phone rang. At first he ignored it, his life had trained him to. But the ringtone was different. A forgotten one, soft and childish, like a memory breaking through the armor he wore. His heart thudded once, then again. He reached for the phone, his fingers suddenly unsure. The screen glowed with a name he hadn't seen in a year. Lily. He swallowed hard and answered. Lily. His voice cracked like an old record. There was a faint sniffle on the other end, followed by a tiny voice trembling through static. Papa. Every defense he'd ever built collapsed in that single word. He closed his eyes, gripping the phone tighter. Hey, sweetheart. Why are you calling so late? Is Mommy there? Silence. Then a choked whisper that sliced through his chest. Mommy's sleeping, and she won't wake up. For a second, Ethan couldn't breathe. The world seemed to tilt. The city outside, once alive with color, blurred into a smear of rain and light. Lily, listen to me, baby. What do you mean? Did you try to wake her? A sob answered him. I tried. She won't move. I'm scared, Papa. He could hear her crying now, tiny gasps between words, the sound of a child clutching the phone like a lifeline. Ethan's mind raced, his body already moving before his thoughts caught up. Lily, sweetheart, listen to Papa. Stay by the phone, okay? Don't go near Mommy, I'm coming. Right now. He grabbed his keys, his coat, the storm outside roaring as if the heavens themselves had woken. The elevator felt endless, every second an eternity. He could still hear her voice echoing in his head. Mommy won't wake up, as if each word carved into him. By the time he reached the parking garage, his chest was tight, every breath laced with guilt. He had promised himself he'd never step foot near that house again. The divorce had burned bridges so thoroughly that even their ashes seemed unreachable. But his daughter's cry had torn through every barrier. As he sped through the rain-soaked streets, flashes of memory attacked him. Clara's face the day she left, tired eyes, trembling lips, holding Lily's hand. You don't need a wife, Ethan. You need an assistant who doesn't complain when you forget her birthday. His reply had been as cold as the marble floor of their mansion. This is who I am. The company comes first. Her last words before walking out. One day you'll realize what first really means. I just hope it's not too late. His tires screeched around a corner. Every traffic light blurred red to green under the downpour. He remembered the custody hearing, the lawyer's sterile tone. Mr. Blackwell, your demanding schedule does not reflect a stable environment for a child. He had stood tall, pretending not to care, even when Lily reached for him from Clara's arms, crying, Papa, come home. Now those words haunted him louder than the thunder. He called Clara's number. It went to voicemail. He called again, cursing under his breath. Answer, damn it! His voice cracked into a whisper. Please. The rain hit harder, like needles on the windshield. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as he replayed Lily's trembling voice. Mummy's sleeping. He pressed harder on the accelerator. The mansion was 15 miles away. 15 miles of regret. As he drove, the city lights flickered in his rearview mirror, reflections of the man he used to be, a man who measured success in numbers, not moments. He'd thought money could buy peace, that control could protect him from loss. But there was no control now, only panic clawing at his throat. His thoughts kept slipping back to Lily, the way she used to fall asleep on his lap during late-night calls. The little paper crown she made him wear one Sunday morning, calling him King Papa. He had laughed once, really laughed. That was before deadlines, before ego, before the word divorce became their final project together. He swerved around a bend, tires slicing through puddles. A flash of lightning illuminated the road ahead, empty and endless. The storm mirrored the chaos inside him. "Hold on, Lily," he muttered, eyes stinging. "Papa's coming." The navigation screen blinked, 10 more miles. He'd never driven this fast in his life. The world outside blurred into streaks of rain and fear. He remembered Clara's last message from months ago, a cold, polite email about school fees. He'd replied through his assistant. That was the last thread between them, cut cleanly, professionally. And now fate was forcing him to face what he'd run from. The rain turned torrential. Wind howled through the cracks of his speeding car. His reflection in the mirror looked nothing like the billionaire on magazine covers. This was a man unmasked, desperate, terrified. When the mansion gates finally appeared through the haze, he slammed the brakes, heart hammering so loud he could barely hear the storm. The driveway was dark. No lights, no sound, only the faint glow of Lily's small silhouette framed in the doorway, holding the phone with both hands. Ethan stepped out into the rain, barely feeling it. Every step toward her felt like walking through every mistake he'd ever made. "Papa," she whispered when he reached her, her tiny body trembling as she ran into his arms. He held her tight, burying his face in her soaked hair. Behind her, through the open door, he saw Clara lying motionless on the floor. A bottle glinted beside her hand. Ethan's breath caught. The storm outside seemed to fade as a heavier one began inside him. "Daddy's here," he whispered, voice breaking. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." And for the first time in years, the man who conquered everything felt utterly powerless, except for the will to save the only 2 hearts he had left. The rain had not stopped when Ethan reached the mansion. Water streamed down the stone walls, pooling under his feet as he pushed through the heavy wooden doors. Inside, the house was silent, eerily so. The air smelled of damp wood and something faintly floral, something that dragged memories up from the depths of his chest. Clara's perfume. She used to spray it on his collar when he left for work, a small act of love that lingered longer than their marriage. "Lily," he whispered. A small voice came from the living room. "Papa?" He followed the sound and froze. Lily stood beside the couch, clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes red and swollen. Clara lay still, her skin pale against the dark couch. The lamp had fallen to the floor, a bottle of pills tipped over beside her. Ethan's breath left him all at once. He knelt beside her, trembling. "Clara? Clara, can you hear me?" Nothing. Her pulse was faint, shallow, but there. He grabbed the phone from the floor, dialing emergency services with shaking fingers. "This is Ethan Blackwell," he rasped. "My ex-wife, she's unresponsive. Pills, send an ambulance. 19 Hawthorne Drive, please hurry." The operator asked questions, but his mind was somewhere else. Guilt clawed at him, whispering that this was his fault, every part of it. The loneliness, the debt, the silence he left behind. He looked at Lily, her tiny body trembling. Confusion etched across her face. He pulled her close. "It's okay, baby. Help's coming." Her voice broke. "Is Mommy sick because of me?" Ethan's chest cracked open. "No, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. The sirens came too soon and not soon enough." Paramedics rushed in, voices blending into the rain. Ethan stood back, helpless, watching them lift Clara onto a stretcher. Her face looked peaceful, as if she'd finally stopped fighting something he couldn't see. When the ambulance doors closed, he and Lily stood in the doorway. The storm soaked them both, but neither moved. Hours later, the house felt colder. The echoes of hurried footsteps and sirens had faded, leaving behind an emptiness that pressed against his ribs. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, her small hand clutching his sleeve. Ethan sat beside her, staring at the faint imprint of Clara's head on the pillow. The scent of her perfume still hung in the air, stubborn, familiar, unforgiving. He let his mind wander back to the year after the divorce. He had signed the papers with steady hands, convinced that distance would make things easier. Clara had refused alimony. "I'll find a way," she'd said, chin lifted, pride and pain twined together. He had wanted to insist, to argue, but his own pride was a sharper blade. He told himself she'd be fine. She always was, but he had seen the truth from a distance. Missed calls, unopened letters from banks, a mutual friend's quiet comment at a charity gala. Clara's been struggling. She won't ask for help. Ethan had done nothing. He had drowned himself in work, buried guilt beneath board meetings and headlines. And now all of that looked meaningless beside the image of her limp hand, and the child curled in his lap. A floorboard creaked. He looked down the hallway. The house felt haunted, not by ghosts but by the life they once shared. The picture frames on the wall showed moments of joy that now looked like lies. Vacations, birthdays, a family that had once felt unbreakable. He walked through the kitchen, each step heavier than the last. The fridge was nearly empty. A single unpaid bill lay on the counter. The clock ticked loud in the stillness. He poured Lily a glass of milk and covered her with a blanket before sitting beside her again. The storm outside softened to a whisper. For a long time he just watched her sleep. The innocence on her face hurt to look at. It was everything he had forgotten how to protect. When the phone rang, he almost didn't answer. Then he did, voice barely steady. The doctor's tone was calm but tired. Clara was alive, stable for now. Ethan closed his eyes, relief and shame flooding together. He didn't move for a long time after that. The house creaked and breathed around him, as if remembering him after a long absence. The storm eased, and through the open window came the faint scent of rain and lilies. He thought of all the times Clara had waited for him to come home, lights left on long after midnight. He thought of how many times he'd chosen meetings over dinners, silence over apology. Lily stirred and murmured in her sleep, "Papa, don't leave again." Her small hand reached out, clutching the edge of his shirt. He swallowed the ache in his throat. "I won't, baby," he whispered. Not this time. The night stretched thin, heavy with the weight of what he could not undo. He dozed off for a moment, head resting against the couch, dreams filled with memories of laughter, warmth, and the scent of rain on Clara's skin. He woke to a soft light filtering through the curtains, unsure for a moment where he was. Then the truth returned. He went to the window. The storm had passed, leaving the sky washed clean. The garden was soaked, petals scattered across the grass. He could almost see Clara there, barefoot, chasing Lily through the sunlight, their laughter spilling through the air like music. A faint sound came from behind him. He turned. Clara was awake, pale, fragile, but alive. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on him. For a long moment neither spoke. The distance between them was years wide, yet fragile as glass. She looked at him, confusion flickering into something colder. Her voice came out in a whisper, raw and tired. "Why now, Ethan?" Her question hung in the air, heavier than any storm. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and sorrow. Machines hummed softly, their blinking lights the only rhythm in a place where time moved differently. Ethan stood outside Clara's room, staring at the door he wasn't allowed to open. The nurse had told him gently, "She doesn't want to see you right now, Mr. Blackwell." He had simply nodded as though he'd expected that. Maybe he had. The truth was, he didn't blame her. Through the narrow glass panel he could see her, Clara, lying still, an IV running into her arm, pale beneath the harsh fluorescent light. Her face looked smaller somehow, carved down by exhaustion and pain. She had always been graceful, composed even when angry. But now she looked fragile, like one wrong word could shatter her completely. Ethan turned away. His reflection in the hallway mirror met him, a man in an immaculate suit, dark circles under his eyes, tie loosened but still knotted. He barely recognized himself anymore. The billionaire CEO, the empire builder, the man who commanded rooms full of men twice his age with nothing but his silence, now reduced to this. Our father who didn't know how to hold his daughter, a husband who had forgotten how to love. He sat down on the cold bench outside her room and buried his face in his hands. Hours passed like smoke. Doctors came and went. He called the office once out of habit. His assistant's voice came through the line. "Sir, the board is waiting for confirmation. The merger announcement is tomorrow morning." "They need your statement." Ethan hesitated. The word sounded foreign, meaningless. "Tomorrow morning." The same words he had repeated for years whenever Clara asked for time, for presence, for him. "Tell them." "Tell them I'm not coming in," he said quietly. A pause. "Sir?" "You heard me, Martin. Handle it." "Or don't. I don't care." He ended the call and leaned back against the wall. The silence after that felt like freedom and failure intertwined. Down the hall he heard small footsteps. Lily came running, her little shoes squeaking on the polished floor. She carried something in her hand, a sheet of paper covered in crayons. "Papa, look," she said, smiling faintly, the kind of smile that carried too much weight for a 5-year-old. Ethan crouched down. On the paper were 3 stick figures, one tall, one with long brown hair, and one small one in between. Above them, in shaky letters, she had written, "Mommy, Daddy, and me." He felt something break deep inside. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," he whispered. "Can we be together again?" She asked innocently, her eyes big, hopeful. "Like in the picture." He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The right answer didn't exist. He hugged her instead, closing his eyes. The weight of that drawing felt heavier than any merger, any fortune, any empire he had ever built. "Papa," she said softly, "Mommy said you used to make her laugh. Will you make her laugh again?" He smiled faintly, though his eyes were wet. "I'll try, baby." "They'll try." Later that night, Ethan walked the quiet corridors alone, the rain still falling outside the hospital windows. He thought of Clara in that dim room, how she used to hum while cooking breakfast, how she used to tease him for his perfectly pressed shirts, how she used to whisper, "You don't always have to be strong." Ethan. He hadn't listened then. He didn't know how. Strength had been his language, his armor. But now it only felt like a prison he had built around himself. A voice broke through his thoughts. "Mr. Blackwell?" He turned to see his CFO, drenched and breathless, holding a folder. "You didn't sign the final documents. The investors are getting nervous. If we miss this window, the whole merger could fall apart." Ethan stared at him blankly. "Then let it," the man blinked. "Sir, you don't mean—" "I do." His voice was calm, but underneath it was something raw. "For the first time in my life, I do." The CFO looked at him like he'd lost his mind, muttered something about consequences, and walked away. Ethan didn't follow. He didn't care. He stood by the window, watching the rain trail down the glass. In the reflection, he saw his own face, tired, lined, human. For the first time, he didn't hate it. Morning came with a faint orange light slipping through the blinds. Lily was asleep in the waiting chair, her drawing clutched against her chest. Ethan sat beside her, running his hand through her hair. The hospital hummed quietly around them. When the nurse told him Clara was awake, he hesitated before standing. His heart thudded painfully as he walked toward her room. She looked at him when he entered, her eyes calm but cold. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I know," he replied, "but I needed to be." She turned her face away. "You left me to drown, Ethan. Do you know what that felt like? Watching everything fall apart while you watched from your tower." He swallowed. "I do now." Her laugh was bitter. "You think showing up fixes everything? You think guilt is love?" "No," he said, voice trembling. "I think love is what I forgot, and guilt is what's left of it." She didn't answer. The silence stretched heavy and fragile. He moved closer, sitting beside her bed. His hand hovered over hers, unsure if he had the right to touch her anymore. "I've spent years building things that don't matter. Towers, deals, titles. And somewhere in that climb I lost what did. I forgot how to be human." Her eyes flicked to him, uncertain, searching. He took a slow breath, his voice cracking. "But I never stopped loving you, Clara. Not for a single day." The words hung there, raw and unpolished, as the rain outside began to fade. For the first time in years, he didn't fill the silence. He let it breathe, fragile and real between the two of them, where love had once lived and maybe, just maybe, could live again. Spring came quietly that year, like the world was giving them permission to start over. The hospital days turned into weeks and then months. Clara went home weaker than before but alive. Her laughter was cautious, her words soft, as if she feared the wrong one might break the fragile peace holding them together. Ethan stayed close, not as the man who once signed her paychecks for love disguised as control, but as someone learning again how to listen, how to show up, how to breathe in the same room without filling it with regret. He still woke early out of habit, but instead of opening his laptop he made breakfast. Scrambled eggs too dry, toast a little burnt, coffee too strong. Lily called it Papa's learning breakfast. Clara smiled the first time she heard that, a small, involuntary smile that made him look away before she could see the tears in his eyes. The house began to heal with them. Lily's drawings replaced unpaid bills on the fridge. The garden bloomed again, overgrown but alive. The air smelled like rain and redemption. Ethan started working remotely at first, promising the board he'd be fully back soon. He never set a date. For the first time, deadlines didn't control him. Time did. The time he spent driving Lily to school, helping her with her drawings, sitting silently beside Clara on the porch while the world outside their fence spun without them. But peace, like fortune, came with a price. One morning, while watering the garden, he saw the headlines on his phone. Blackwell Empire in crisis. CEO missing from boardroom for months. Beneath it, a photo, him in a hoodie holding Lily's hand outside the hospital. The caption read, "Billionaires fall from grace." His stomach turned. He had known this would come eventually. Investors were panicking. Shares were falling. His phone exploded with calls. The CFO, the board, reporters. "Ethan, you need to return immediately," Martin's voice said over the line, urgent, cold. The merger failed. Stocks are crashing. You can still salvage this if you make a statement. Today. Ethan looked through the kitchen window. Lily was playing in the backyard, her hair flying. Clara watching her from the porch, sunlight catching the faint smile on her face. He had never seen anything more valuable. "I'll think about it," he said and hung up. That night the silence between him and Clara was different. Not angry, but waiting. She had seen the news too. "They'll destroy you if you walk away," she said quietly. He nodded. "They already did long ago. I just didn't notice." Her eyes softened. "You built that company from nothing. I built it instead of us," he whispered. "Maybe this time I can choose right." She didn't answer, but her hand lingered on his arm for the briefest second before she turned away. The next morning, he stood before a wall of cameras and microphones. The press conference was his idea, his farewell, though no one else knew it yet. The city glimmered behind him, the skyline he had once conquered. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Blackwell, where have you been? Are the rumors about your resignation true?" He raised a hand. The crowd hushed. "I've spent the last year chasing numbers, deals, and titles," he began, his voice steady. "I believed success meant never stopping. But I was wrong. Success means knowing what's worth keeping when everything else falls apart." He paused, glancing at the cameras, then lowering his gaze. "My daughter called me one night and said her mother wouldn't wake up. That was the night I realized I had become rich in everything, except what mattered. So today I'm stepping down as CEO of Blackwell Industries." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Flashbulbs erupted. "My greatest investment," he said, his voice soft but clear, "is love." He walked away before anyone could ask another question. The rain began as he reached the car, light at first, then steady, the kind that carried memory in every drop. He drove home slowly, each turn of the wheel feeling lighter than the last. When he pulled into the driveway, Lily was already outside, barefoot, arms spread wide to catch the rain. She spotted him, face lighting up, and ran toward him, her laughter piercing the grey sky. "Papa!" she shouted. He stepped out and she leapt into his arms, the rain soaking them both. Her giggles filled the air, innocent and full of life. Clara stood at the doorway, a shawl around her shoulders, eyes shining with something between tears and hope. Ethan looked at her. For the first time, she didn't look away. He held Lily close, her small heart beating against his chest, and whispered, "You did it, sweetheart. You saved me." Clara took a step forward, rain dripping from her hair.